ke mai luna mai e. O nā mea huna no e au, o nā mele.
At the end of the presentation at Napohaku, Hanau, I had asked for this class, we might want to talk about Laʻau Lapaʻau and plants that we have used as Laʻau that we would want to share with each other and maybe see it as a way that we can use things, yeah? I started talking about the huaka'i because I focus on lauki, yeah, the tea leaf plant. It's a kinolau of lono. And this is the opening season of lono i ka makahiki. That plant has many, many uses, medicinal as well as practical. The mu'o I use in the ceremony of cleansing. But when I've gone hiking in the mountains, and if the kamali'i no listen, they like run ahead, they don't want to be the last one. And so they're not very careful about watching how they run over the rocks and everything. There's a tendency someone is going to fall and scrape the leg. When that happens, we get the tea leaf plant. Strip a green leaf, clean it as much as possible. It has a protective layer on the top, but I'm going for the chlorophyll, the green part of the leaf. And usually when I go hiking, we take some, I usually have a pocket knife. Well, usually my husband is the one, he's the Boy Scout leader. He's the one that has all of that. But I might bring a spoon because I'm the one that takes care of the food and what we're going to eat at the end of the journey. So I might get the spoon that has a thin edge, and I'll begin to scrape gently to get the chlorophyll from the leaf. You got to clean the leaf first, yeah? And then with the chlorophyll, then I put it over the area where there is the bleeding. And I have to do enough so that I cover that whole area. Then I get the mu'o, the unfurled part of the tea leaf plant, and I open it, making sure my hand isn't touching the center part because it is sterile. It is a sterile bandage, and I lay it down over the area. With my hand holding the top, I'm looking around for the dry leaf, or I'm looking around for a leaf that's kind of brownish with little bit yellow because it's more pliable. And I can instruct people to twist so that it forms cordage. Or I can teach them how to braid it. All my girls had long hair. They learned braiding very early. Beat the brother, because he no more long hair, he don't know how to do that. So anyway, my family learned how to braid. And with the braiding cordage, like we use for the ko, I wrap it around and I tie it in place. So as a bandage, as a poultice for the part that's bleeding, that's one use of the tea leaf. The other use of the tea leaf that I found, I used it with my children when they were babies. They were young, and even up until 8, 9 years old. And then my husband later on in life, where he had an illness of extreme cold, and then his temperature was not controlled, I would get the tea leaf, the green tea leaf, take out the midrib from the back, and then I would use it like, you know, we have aspirin nowadays to bring the fever down. I use the tea leaf itself to bring the fever down. The heat from the body is taken in by the leaf. It lowers the body temperature. So not just over here, but the babies when they were young, my husband and I get all the tea leaves and we lay it in the crib, put the baby on it, and then we have the other tea leaves we would put on the forehead over here and leave it there. We don't touch it because the heat from our hands would go into it. And then when we see the leaf begins to wilt, with those that are in the sun, you can see they're not straight up like this. But some of them begin, the sides begin to turn down. That means it's absorbing the heat and it's becoming what we call mai. It's turning mai, it's getting soft. That tells me it's working. So I leave it there until I think that the temperature might be coming out again, then I get a whole batch of leaves again. So in my yard, I have a lot of tea leaf plants because we used it with all the children as they were growing up. Yeah? So it's a fever reducer.
Auntie, my mom used to tell me when they were little kids, they would actually eat the root of the tea leaf and that it was really ono. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah, it's the beginnings of okolehau.
So how
It's sugary. The roots have a concentration of sugar. And then when it's heated, then the sugar gets into the liquid, and that's the fermentation process for the making of okolehau. I can't give you the recipe.
The imu tea
Yes.
is the imu for the tea. The tea leaves during periods of starvation.
Yeah. So
they would use the tea root as a food source.
As a food source too to
And
eat.
that's where the name comes.
Yeah, and it's because the root is really big. The root is really big. It has to be cooked in the imu. One of the theories was my husband on his archaeological surveys came across an area that had a lot of small, what looked like imu, small imu. But when he noticed around, there were a lot of tea leaf plants. So he wondered, why would there be a lot of small imu? And then he theorized, oh, during Prohibition time, Hawaiians would go mauka to make their own okolehau. And so they dig out the roots, and then with the stalks, they put them back in the ground to start the new batch. And then to make it easier for carrying down, clean it up. They get to the stream, clean out all the dirt. They start the emus and then put the roots inside to begin that process of cooking to break it down to the sweetness of the sugar. Yeah.
That's plant-based right there.
And I'm pretty sure that it probably had some medicinal effects too.
Plus we cook with
Yeah.
Auntie, I tried the la'i, the key with, they said it was good for diabetes. They made it into like a white milk. It's very beautiful. And it was Kauai, and it was very, very, and it was a ritual, but they drank it and they said this is a very good for diabetes.
Was that the root, Mommy?
Yeah, the root. Yeah. It wasn't alcoholic, but it was certainly a taste.
So in order to get the white milk, it probably wasn't cooked.
They frothed it somehow. I don't know how. Yeah,
Huh.
it definitely was white. It's amazing.
So the use of the root
It's
for diabetes.
is medicinal until it turns to really medicinal. You know, I mean, it goes because that type of alcohol was used to really cleanse, because that is a cleansing to a point, and then if you overdo it, it gets different. But it was a sterilizer when you get to that form of alcohol content.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, you know, that would, I don't know, I just, one shot of that, wow. Remember when you get sick, one shot of whiskey, boom. You're like, whoa, I'm not feeling sick anymore. I wonder why that is.
That's how I felt when I took Ava for the first time
Yeah.
and I was on top the Hokulea.
Oh.
I was so seasick, 17 hours. And then first time I heard about Ava, I heard it tasted like mud water, and I was thinking I'm going to throw up in front of all of these people, video camera, community, everything going on. And they said, yeah, as an adult, Malia, you got to drink them. It's ceremony. And oh my gosh, I was nervous. But I clapped my hand, I drank them. Immediate, my whole nausea, my whole sickness was gone. I was like, I'll take more of that. It was an immediate effect on my nausea.
Okay. Anybody else with information about the tea plant?
I have a question. Is the different color used for different thing or different purpose? Because like in Philippines, and they plant the red one because they say the red one is protection from spirit, and then even my Samoan friend, when they work, but they wear the red one, they said the red one has mana. So I was wondering if in Hawaiian there's
Yeah.
knowledge about
In Hawaiian culture, the importance is the green one because it's the body form of the god. Yeah. The colored ones are introduced. So it doesn't have that spiritual connotation like the tea leaf. However, in different cultures, like I'm thinking in American Samoa, the red tea leaf has a spiritual symbolism for them because some of them still practice burying the deceased in front of the house. Yeah. So the red tea leaves are planted in these areas. So, and I don't know the meaning behind that, but it has symbolism for different cultures. Yeah.
but for Hawaiian it's the green.
Yeah. For Hawaiian, it's the green. Look,
Sometimes leaf comes out very crinkled on certain plants. Can you explain the significance of that type of tea leaf? It's essentially the same tea leaf, but some of the plants, the leaves are very crinkled. Do you know?
there is a Kahuna tea leaf. The Kahuna tea leaf is one that Tutupukui says that kahunas use for healing. And usually it's for the pikai, the sprinkling of the water. Because the leaves don't get very big. They stay about like this. So I think I presented one to this campus. So I'm hoping that it will take, and if it doesn't take, you better let me know. Then maybe I gotta grow it and bring it over here. And I do that because we have a program on this campus that honors and respects indigenous practices. And not just Hawaiian, but there is an emphasis on Hawaiian. So this is a place that I know they're going to malama if I give something special. So I have plants that we received from Tutupukui. And as part of the tradition of Hooponopono that I'm teaching here, it's fitting that I donate one of those plants for this campus. And then from here, we can make others, yeah? Because we're not going to do it by seeds. We do it by cutting, so it's going to be just like the original. Yeah. But you're right, we do have that, yeah. Now, whether or not that has the body form, is a kinolau, I'm not certain. She never said anything about that. But I know that the common tea leaf plant is the one that is a necessity for every Hawaiian house. Yeah. Okay, you got your plant. Are you ready to tell us about it?
I don't really know that much about it. Because like I said, I'm still learning since coming out here in the Mala. I've been taught that when we have a cold, that if we brew a tea with the uhaloa, the wapine, which is hanging up behind you, the lemongrass, and the root of the olena, if you brew them together into a tea, let it cool just a little bit, put a little bit of honey to soothe the throat. When you drink that, it'll help with the mucus that's inside of you. It'll release all that pressure. And for me and my children, it works. And those that work here.
So what you do is concoct a drink from the leaves that are dried and made into a tea, and the root. Do you clean the root and put the whole root inside to draw out the olena?
We wash it off and then we slice it kind of thin.
Oh, slice it like you would pake ginger when you make soup. Okay, and then you boil it together. And then you, how do you know how much honey to put in?
Oh, that's just for taste because the uhaloa can be bitter if you leave it a little too long.
Okay,
But Western science also says it helps with throat irritation. I don't know
yeah.
what native thought is on it.
So it's taken for congestion. And if you have a deeper congestion, it'll loosen up the phlegm. Okay. Okay. Anybody else had experiences with uhaloa?
With the uhaloa, usually what I do is I just work with the root rather than the leaves, although I know that leaves are also sometimes thrown in for boiling purpose. But especially for sore throat, when you get the root, what you do is first you clean the outer bark, and then you peel off that layer, that softer layer, and you kind of eat the core because it's essentially wood, you know? And so what I would usually do is chew on it, and then the saliva is created, and then simply swallow, and that will clear the pain and the sore throat immediately. That's a lazy man's.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's very very quick.
That's the point.
Cleansing also by drinking the kai is a way of removing uhani that's in the body. Yeah, so that's a Laʻau Lapaʻau for clearing not just your inner tracks, but for anything spiritual that doesn't belong there, that has become a noho on you. Yeah.
And so, you know, when we were sick, Mom would take us to the ocean. We lived on the beach in Kailua. So, you know, I'd always say, wow, why is Mom taking us to the ocean? So she'd come and swim out about half a mile, very far. And we'd have to follow her. So she'd swim like, oh my God. So swim. And, you know, we just would, you know, like, and then we'd come out and then swim back in, and then it all came out. You know, so I remember that. That was very helpful and healing for me.
At least half a mile.
A kai swims way far.
I've done that as a child.
Yes,
Now
yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
And half a mile probably is to get your body active.
Yeah.
And then half a mile out, the water there is more pure kai. the closer to the shore it is, you have all the pollutants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd want to go out to the clean water to be able to do that. And by the time you come back, you saturated with kai. I remember saying to the kids, especially when they got plenty hupe kole, oh, stuck, no can breathe. I used to suck it out, but after a while, when they got older, hey, we're going to the beach. Go swim, dunk your head in the water. And they come up, it's all loosened. The phlegm is all loosened. It's a natural way, yeah, yeah.
Auntie, the kupuna used to take the olena juice and put that in the nostril. It burns. But it opens up and like clears it up like, oh my gosh, amazing. But
Yes.
it burns.
Yes. The olena is another plant that we have out here and in the back here. And the rhizome is the one that you look for. Not the new rhizome that's growing, not the new root that's growing, but the root out of which the new rhizome is growing. That's the one you work with. But by the time it begins to palahe, that's not, I'm not sure if that's what you would use for sinus, or I think that you might want to use it for dye, making dyes. Yeah, I would think that you'd want the juice that you have to squeeze still.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah, they juice it. And
Yeah.
then they put it inside the nose. And I know some that put it in the eye too. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it somehow will get rid of whatever
the cavity,
infection,
sinus cavity.
within that
Yes.
sinus cavity. It opens it all
Yeah.
up for them.
So we know sinus mixed with tea is something you can drink for cleansing, for loosening up the mucus. You can use it full strength of the liquid from the olena root is very strong, very, very strong. I would not want or to advise people to use it with children. My husband had, from the time he was young, he had sinus problems. And whenever he went to the doctor, they gave him medication to kind of loosen. But it always returned. And when it returned, he had pounding headaches, the kind that for him was so painful. He'd tear. And my husband can take a lot of pain. So by the time he teared, it was really bad. And it didn't happen all the time because he'd get some relief, but never cleaned it out. One day when we were dating, he had an episode of the sinus, so my mother prepared the medicine. And she pounded the root, got the poi strainer, of which was not the poi strainer. We had the same material, was like the poi strainer. And she squeezed the liquid out. It was nice and orange. And she used the eyedropper and sucked up. So when she pressed the top, one drop would come out. She only had to do 2 drops in each nostril, had him lie down with his head hanging over the edge. That would ensure that the liquid of the olena would go all the way up here into all of this cavity area as well as over here. Within half an hour, I saw him grabbing the sheets on the side, and I said, "Is it sore?" He said, "Ah, I can't stand it. It's like a hammer being pounded." And my mother said, "You gotta stay like that at least half an hour." She let him go for 45 minutes. She said, "Now you come up." When he raised himself up, luckily she had towels around. and he started blowing the mucus out. The first ones that came out was very orangey colored, but as he started blowing some more, what came out was gray matter, gray mucus. The gray started coming out, and he kept on blowing as long as he felt that there was something to come out. So when he looked at it, he didn't realize that the sinus had been accumulating up here, and was already turning, you know. So he connected that with the amount of pain because didn't have a way to come out. But the Olena was the one that loosened it. And by putting the head over the edge, the Olena was ensured to go to the places that it needed to go to impact what was inside, yeah. He never had an episode of sinus again for the rest of his life. So it is powerful. So what would a doctor say? If the full strength of the medicine is too strong, it can cause internal damage. So you might want to dilute it. I wouldn't advise experimenting with children. Their tissues are too fragile and it can cause harm to them. Those that want to try Olena for the first time, you might want to try it diluted to see what the effect is first. And depending on what part you get the juice from is going to determine the strength of that Olena. So it's very hard to give a specific, and it's not a good idea for this class to give specific recipes, because what works for one might not work for another. But like I said, my mother knew that my husband tolerated a lot of physical pain. He had good endurance, so she wasn't worried about him.
I take Olena shots.
What kind of shots are those?
So I juice the Olena plant into a jigger size, and I mix it with black pepper because they say if you mix black pepper into Olena, it gives off a certain healing property, and it allows it to be absorbed easier for healing.
Oh.
And so I pinch a pinch of black pepper with a little jigger, and I do that for about a week, and then I go off of it. Because apparently too much of anything can actually have a reverse effect.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
told. So I do Olena shots, and then I go off of it for a week, and then I go back to doing it.
You call it shots because it's in
I
a
call it
jigger.
shot in a
It's
jigger.
funny.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what they refer to as
okay.
shots when it's in a jigger. Anything, Auntie, they have Jello shots nowadays, and that's alcohol with Jello in Jello, and they call it shots.
You were vigorously nodding your head when she talked about the...
Oh no, about the pepper.
Yes, yes, yes. What has it been like for you?
I just heard about cooking the Olena with pepper because it activates some kind of healing property. Yeah, I've used Olena for sure. My dad doesn't really, my dad is the one with the Hawaiian blood, but he doesn't really practice Laʻau Lapaʻau or like too much cultural things. Though in terms of what he does for me is definitely the saltwater therapy, you know, even for mental, if I'm feeling depressed or whatever, tell me come outside, go in the water, you feel better. Always make me go outside, go in the water, or even hangover, things like that. As far as Laʻau Lapaʻau, the little knowledge I have is more from my mom, who's from Philippines. She uses a lot of marungay in the soup for when it's sick. She get the Noni, the leaf, She
Yes.
used to make me get the leaf and maybe like over the like a gas stove fire, you kind of make the leaf like that a little bit, get warm.
Yeah, to get it my.
Maybe, yeah, get
Yeah.
it mine, yeah. And then she put like on her back for like, cramp or
Heat,
something like
heat
that.
pad.
Yeah, like heat
Becomes
pad.
like a heat.
Yeah, like that. What else? Trying to remember what else she used. Definitely the salabat, the ginger, even just chew on ginger, things like that. Molena she used. I can't remember what else.
I'm going to try that, the Noni leaf.
Yeah,
Oh,
like a
it
heat
works.
pad.
Yeah. Because every so often it's my back area that gets real cold, and I'm always struggling to make sure I wear something to keep the heat in the back of my body.
Yeah.
Which means now I gotta plant a Noni tree in my yard.
That's a good.
Any other uses of Noni?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Papa Kawa'a, over in Molokai. I went and visited him once, and he had the Noni on toothpicks on the windowsill, and it was dripping, drip, drip, drip. And he takes evidently a shot of Noni every day, and he says, and that is the best medicine. And that was 100% Noni, and it didn't smell good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't taste bad.
Yeah, but it doesn't taste bad.
Yeah.
I know, I
Does
tasted
smell,
it.
yeah.
And then in Waipio, Kia taught us to eat the Noni like an apple. And then, so we ate it like, just one bite. Kind.
The soft or when it's still hard?
It was kind of medium.
Oh.
You could eat it. It didn't crunch like an apple, but yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah.
I,
So is there a difference in potency from one that's still firm and one that's reaching that
Yeah, the ripening.
palahe point?
If it's firm, you cannot bite it. It's hard.
yeah.
When it softens, then it begins to become more potent. So sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you begin to sneeze and you feel a cold forming. You just grab the soft one and you take a big bite and you just tell yourself, "This is not ice cream. This is medicine."
Nice.
And then it will clear you for the rest of the day.
Ah.
Usually I take that jigger, but what I do is I pick it up, I put it in a bottle and let it seep out,
Ferment.
and then I put it in a jigger or a shot glass. Usually a jigger. The shot is 2 times a jigger. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was always told that we don't ingest the noni. So like my room were never allowed to ingest it. But like I don't know why. Because like you guys are all saying that you ingest it, and I was like I never did because you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Oh,
I heard
yeah.
that too.
Well, I was always my uncle, and I come from a healing family that I'm slowly getting more and more with. But Noni, as so much people have talked about Noni shots and these energy stuff and drink. I was always told never, don't ever play with Noni if you're not totally familiar with it,
Yeah.
because like you was mentioning, too much of anything is not a good thing. And I was given an example where someone had taken too much and they ended up actually dying from it, and what it was that he drowned himself because it's so slimy, and the what you get from it is so thick that you can overdo yourself and you don't have the time to digest through all of that slime, so you ended up suffocating yourself. So I was always very wary. I was always told not to play with Noni very much, other than leaf. You can use a leaf for the muscles or anything. But I've been told Noni helped with things from cancer to respiratory issues to a lot of different illnesses.
Yeah.
But to be very aware of what you do and how
Right,
you do it.
right,
It's
right.
always
And
advice.
associated with this is numbers. With Hawaiian medicine, you are told to take this for X numbers of days and then you have to rest. So if you're the uninitiated and you think, oh, the more I take it, the better I'm going to become, then the Laʻau Lapaʻau person does it in units of numbers. Yeah. So the one that prescribes it will tell you how long you can take it, and then how long you need to rest, and then taking it again. So that's the precaution that's missing in what people don't realize is the treatment requires and is effective in portions of so many days. Yeah. So when we have the next course, the Laʻau Lapaʻau person will tell us about what numbers for treatment are applied in the dispensing of medicine, Hawaiian style. So now, as a word of caution again, hear that this is how we use it, but what's not being given to you is how long and what is the quantity. Yeah. So it's risky to try unless somebody who has done it that you know of is there to guide you in what you do. So thank you for that word of caution. Yeah. But know that medicine and treatment is done in sequence of numbers. Just a little bit about the banana stump. When my father was young, his dad was like a civil servant in the valley of Halawa. And so there was a malihine that came into the valley and no identifying information. And he died. He had been up in the mountains and he died. Well, as the identified official for Halawa, my grandfather had the responsibility of taking care of the body. So when he came across the body, he told my father to get an old door because it was nice and flat and it could be a platform on which they could put the body. But he also told my father that they had to cut banana stumps because the banana stumps would take the heat away from the body and keep it cool until they can, before it begins to palahe and parts of the body turn fluid. So, and then they had to get pulu from the hapu'u to stuff areas where there might be fluids coming out. Yeah, like the nostrils, the ears, the anus, and if there were open wounds, the open wounds. Then by that time, they had cloth. And so get old clothing or old towels or old sheets. And they wrap the door over all of this. So they had to make it secure because they had to find a cave to put the body in. Well, when I heard this story, 22 years old, very inquisitive. So Dad, what side of the valley is the cave? He said, why you wanna know? I said, because when we go hiking, Lekeke and I go into the valley, we can go check out the cave. And he got so furious with me. He said, don't you go disturb the iwi of that man. He refused to tell us. But the lesson I learned was, he's just revealing the practice. But it wasn't for me to go maha'oi into an area that's not for me. For a lot of the serious kinds of ailments, yeah. My mother, in the preparation of the Laʻau, she says the prayer to have the mana from the plant itself to be effective in treating the illness. My husband was the patient, so he was the receiver, but he had to believe in it. And that made it easier because he believes in Laʻau Lapaʻau too, although he never practiced it, but he believes in the value of it. But the one who prepares the Laʻau has to say to the person, the patient, that you have to believe. If you don't believe, it's not going to work. And I think what happens is, if you believe in something, then you open yourself up to receive the positive mana from that item. If you don't believe, your pick fences are up, and then it's not going to work. The other thing too is that many Laʻau Lapaʻau practitioners, if it's a very serious illness, they often ask the patient, have you done Hooponopono? Because our practitioners recognize if your mind is still in a turmoil, your psyche is in a turmoil, and you haven't dealt with the issues about it, the medicine is not going to work. So they would do Hooponopono before they give the medicine. Yeah. You know, I recently got this book, Plants for Our Healing, and it was written by May Aloha. It does not give recipes. All it does is identify the name of the plant. It shows pictures of the different plants itself, and the Hawaiian name, scientific name, the common name that it's known by. But it's an excellent book because it identifies things that you might find in and around your home, or that you've seen in the nursery that you may want to purchase to start your own collection. So, yeah. Beautiful photographs, easy to identify. She doesn't tell specifically what it's used for, but at least you have an idea. It has medicinal value. And then when you're with a Laʻau Lapaʻau, you can ask them about it. Yeah, yeah. So this would be the first step. Go look in your yard. Do you have any of these plants? And you may find that you've already begun your Laʻau garden. So I just got this, and I thought I'd bring it to show these are common plants. Yeah, and if you look and you ask within your family, they may come out with stories. Sometimes they don't say anything because they truly don't know. But they may say, they may not say something because they're not sure if you're open to it. Because in the Hawaiian way, if you're leaning more to a certain way of thinking, then better for them to cut than to open it. But I think I come from the school where I can open it for you, and then you make the choice. You make the choice which way you want to go. And when you make the choice, you make it knowing that there are spiritual aspects to Hawaiian medicine, and it goes arm in arm. Cannot go without it. Yeah, gotta go arm in arm. So in Nohona, Hawaii, spirituality is a key part of the healing process.